fear of failure and fail faster so we can succeed faster. Review, recharge. Recharge the support, the team, bringing each other together, and finally, re-attack. And that's my favorite word, by the way, attack. Go ahead and say that, attack. No, like, say it like you mean it, attack. Yeah. How do we go back out there and re-attack, right? Because there are only 2 ways to succeed. Do I have any takers on that? Only 2 ways. Who agrees with me? 2 ways to succeed. Raise your hand. Okay, who does not agree with me? 2 ways to succeed. Only raise your hand. See, that's the important part of the poll right there, the other side. How many are just waiting to hear what I say? Absolutely. A lot of you government military folks, that's a good angle. The first time or again? The first time or again? Pure and simple, cut and dry. Create the flight plan. Do your pre-flight. Mitigate the risks. Take off. The abundance of power. And we have a lot of power in this room. We have a lot of leaders in this room. How do we get them qualified? Access and exposure. The execution. How do we steer our team? If we had each person on our team thinking with that breakthrough mentality, what is the amazing creative power that can be transferred into that actual kinetic stuff? Not potential anymore, but innovation, execution, and finally review, recharge, re-attack, right? And I do have mic runners. At any point, if you have a question, mic runners, raise your hand. Where are you? They're actually taking, okay, very good. Don't stand the whole time, right? I got to keep you rested, recharged. Do I have any questions at this point on anything I've covered on flight plan stuff? Usually don't take questions, but this morning you all were very interactive, and I kind of want to keep that theme going if you would like to interact in that fashion. Any takers on that? All right, moving on. At any point, just raise your hand, and I'll try to call on you. So as I'm going through college, I got this letter in the mail, and it said, you know, Armour, you've already taken the first part of your police academy stuff. We're starting up another academy, and we want you to be part of the team. And I'm psyched. I'm excited. I go down. I take the test. I pass. Get into academy. Go through 6 months, and it is amazing. Everything you saw in the police academy, the movie, right? Do we remember that? Maybe not. But now it's Friday night, graduation night. And my class is all sitting, kind of like last night. You know, all the graduates are sitting over here, and we're all excited. And I'd been in my uniform for a good 2 days straight. You know, full uniform, bulletproof vest, gun belt. I even had the gun in the holster. No bullets yet. Wasn't certified. But I did have the gun in the holster, and I was practicing my walk. Oh, yeah, that's right. So they call up the first row. I get up, they call my name, and I walk across the stage. And I shake the chief's hand. Oh, yeah. I walk over to the assistant chief. Oh, yeah. Because that's when it happened. I was certified. I took the magazine out of my pocket and put it in my gun, just like they taught us. Click. And I walked down the stairs, walked in front of everyone in the audience, got in front of my peers, and I looked at them. Yeah, that's right. You see, my last name starts with A. I was certified. They weren't. So they pronounce us all police officers. We throw our hats up in the air, and we are running around. Everybody's looking for their training officer, and I'm looking for my guy, Matt. Matt, where are you, Matt? Matt, you're not in uniform. You're not dressed. Oh, Armour, they didn't tell you. We have Saturdays and Sundays off. What? You mean I have to wait 2 whole days before I can go to work? I know you all feel the same way. Okay, maybe not. Well, I had to wait all day Monday as well because we worked midnights. So I got there 2 hours early. It was cool. I washed the car, Armour all the tires. Matt was happy we had take-home cars. And we got out there on the road. And it was amazing, just like Cops on TV. Have you seen Cops, Pat? Yeah? Did you see me? No, okay. The next night, same thing. Absolutely amazing. But around 2 o'clock, things started to slow down. So we pulled up to the red light. Matt said, all right, switch seats. I got in the driver's seat, and I was so excited because I knew we were going to pull off into a parking lot. And we were going to do, familiarization drills, siren, lights, computer, just getting familiar with the police car actually out on the road. He said, all right, the first thing you're going to do is a routine traffic stop. I said, what, me? Yes, you. Okay. See that truck right there with the excessive fumes coming out the exhaust? I want you to pull it over. Okay. Turn on the lights. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're going to get a huge ticket. Look at all those fumes. They pushed on the accelerator. Take off after him. Pursuit? Go! Do I turn on the siren? Turn on the siren. They turned right. Turn right. They turned right into the projects. Turn into the projects. They hit a dumpster. Don't hit the dumpster. The passenger and driver bailed. He said, I got the driver, you got the passenger. I jumped out the car, I took off running. Tripped over a crack in the sidewalk. How embarrassing. I quickly jumped off. I took off running. Stop, get on the ground, stop, get on the ground. And that woman was gone. She was at least 8 feet tall, 50 pounds. You all got that? And I am running, and I feel those flames coming out of my chest. And in a few moments, I said, man, if this woman doesn't stop, I'm going to have to walk. And then I looked at everyone coming out of their homes, and I said, oh, no, I'm not walking. So I took off running. Second wind kicks in. She looks behind her. She sees me still coming, and she stopped, got on the ground, spread her arms and legs, and that's when I got up to her. Why were you running? She said, I was scared. It's like, you don't run from the police. Knelt down, I cuffed her, I stood her up, and I looked at everybody. Yeah, that's right. Put her in the car. First pursuit, second day on the job. And we've all heard the phrase, when you fall down, you get back up. That's right. But you just don't get up and dust yourself off and look at that hole in your brand new trousers. You take off with 100%. Everything you have inside. Something happens with our system. Server goes down. We just don't say, oh, well, everybody go home today. Now, we kind of feel that way, right? Because when the server goes down, can we even do work anymore these days? But we get up, dust ourselves off, and go back out again. Cybersecurity. How do we tackle that? Everything that we try or that we put together, we come up with, is not going to work. But we dust ourselves off and go back out there. Heaven forbid they gave up on cancer research. That's something we have to get back up, dust ourselves off, and go back out again. That woman, running scared, she wasn't even running from the police. She was running from life. Have we seen some of those folks out there? Don't know why they're running, don't even know why they're saying no to something. All they know is they're saying no and they don't want to budge. How do we get that through? The reattack, the recharge, the continuing to go on, the dusting yourself off and reattacking with that 100%. I was on the force for a couple years and still could not get the woman in that flight suit out of my head. And I said, you know what, this is my childhood dream. I love it. But man, wouldn't that be cool to be a combat pilot? So I decided to leave the force. Became a Marine. Went through officer candidate school, went through the basic course, went through flight school, graduated with my Pensacola Wings of Gold on July 21st, 2001. I headed out to Camp Pendleton, California, which was in Southern California. We have any Southern California folks or people familiar with SoCal? All right, yes, my peeps. I only lived there for 5 years, but I can still claim it. So we got out there, and I'm riding on the road, north, I-5, actually, There isn't bumper-to-bumper traffic this morning, ironically. But on the radio, I hear the announcer say the Pentagon has just been struck. You can imagine what was going on in my mind at that time. And I'm sure if I asked anyone in this room where you were when you either heard it on the radio, saw it on the TV, or someone told you about it, you know exactly where you were and what you were doing. When I got to that ready room, the pilots were standing, staring at the events of the day unfold. And we knew we'd all be going somewhere soon. Less than 365 days later, I found myself flying over the deserts of Iraq, protecting the men and women on the ground. The war started, the war raged on, the war ended. And after things slowed down, our lead tactics instructor said, all right, we have a tactics test. I said, whoa, wait a minute, I haven't been studying. Armor, we have a test. I said, but I'm going on a mission, 4 days, Iraq. Armor, we're taking the test when you get back. I said, okay, got it. Packed up my tactical manual this thick, safety manual, which was about that thick, various other manuals, piled them in my attack helicopter, headed into Iraq to do what I called studying. The next day we got back, 15 minutes sitting in that room, things seemed like they were coming apart, literally, very quickly. 15 minutes into it, I knew I wasn't doing so hot. The next day, confirmed. I had bombed. And honestly, I was devastated. Because so many people were watching the performance of what I was doing. I felt like I'd let so many people down. I felt like I'd let women down. I felt like I'd let black folks down. I felt like I'd let the Marine Corps down. I felt like I'd let my family down, myself down. But most of all, I felt like I'd let those guys in the squadron down who didn't see the true potential of what I or any other woman or minority could do. And that was hard to take. Now, I passed that test the next week with flying colors. But I didn't pass it the first time. And that's what was difficult. That accountability piece, how we want our gear to work the first time. Speaking of first times, I got to do this, right? Help me out, y'all. You got to accessorize. So, as I am recovering from this failure on the tactics test, I was pretty down on myself because I wanted to be on the fast track. Top Gun, WTI, flight, test pilot, flight instructor, all of that cool stuff. And when you fail a test, they're not just putting you on the fast track. I ended up doing a couple more tours. Everything was cool, but I wasn't on the fast track. And I felt a little down about that for a while. I would always think about that. I got to headquarters Marine Corps. I'm serving as a diversity liaison officer to the Pentagon. We're working on this whole new campaign plan on strategic initiatives, really neat stuff. And it's actually where I came up with what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and that's sharing best practices. How do we create the breakthroughs? One night I'm sitting in the car with my bud, and I'm talking about things, just sharing things with her, and, we're just having that girl talk. And I'm sharing things that, honestly, outside of that car, would have felt like whining. But that night, inside that car, just felt like getting little things off the chest. And it felt pretty good. I was getting lighter. Little did I know, years of those little things actually got pretty heavy. And then I got to that tactics test. I said, if I'd only passed that tactics test, man, I would have gone to WTI. I would have gone to Top Gun. I would have been that test pilot. I would be back in Iraq right now with the rest of my squadron. Then I stopped. I said, I would be back in Iraq right now. I wouldn't have been here to build the relationships that I had in the last year. I wouldn't have been here for the seed to be planted on what I wanted to do and what I call my third life, third opportunity. I wouldn't have been here when my mom called on that Wednesday afternoon. Her birthday was coming up on Saturday, and she wanted to know if I could come home. And I'd already been home over 6 times because my dad had also been diagnosed with terminal bone cancer that year. And I said, Mom, the boss isn't letting anybody go home. It's really tight. She's like, oh, baby, but I said, well, Mom, I'll really try to come home in the next couple of weeks, but I just can't this weekend, and it's really just too short a notice. Boss isn't letting anyone go. And I could hear the sadness in her voice. You know how you can hear it when you're talking on the phone with some of the disappointment. And Dad was going to be back. Well, actually, he was in the hospital for routine blood work, and he was going to be there on her birthday as well. So when I hung up that phone, I immediately booked a ticket to Travelocity, on Travelocity. And I went into my boss's office, and I said, Sir, I got to go home. I already booked the ticket. He did not laugh. But he did let me go home. I walk in the door, I'm like, hey, Mom, surprise, happy birthday. She's like, oh, baby. It was great, greatest surprise in the world. We head up to the hospital to see Dad. We walk in, and he's surprised. You know, he's happy, he's smiling. He's like, oh, it's your mom's birthday. It was awesome. My dad was my favorite Marine, my American hero. We got there at 2 o'clock. By 6:07, Dad had passed away. Les Brown has an amazing saying. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. For so many years, I regretted that tactics test. But sitting in that car that night, I finally got it. Failing that test put me in the room with my dad that day. What an amazing blessing. Like right now, I would never go back and change the results of that test. Now, I wouldn't fail one in the future. But I wouldn't change that one. Right now, we're in the frame. Transition is hard. Taking creative thoughts and transitioning them into innovation can be challenging. But how do we not look at what's going on, or why is this happening, or why did they say no, or why did it bog down, and just continue to move with 100% intensity? Because we don't always know the why in the moment. Why did I change my clothes? Because, folks, life is all about transition. Going from where you are to where we want to be. Everything that was in this flight suit is now in this flight suit. And notice I look a lot more like you all now. We're all in our flight suits. Where we go, we're sexy attack helicopters. Where we go is up to us. Forward, back, side to side, hover. It's truly up to us. How do we get to where we want to be? It's all about the support network. The folks that are in this room right now, how do we work with each other, collaborate, have that conversation, that strategic communication, taking some of the best practices, some of the initiatives we even talked about this morning, and move them forward in our organizations? How do we partner industry with government, person to person? Because it's really about relationships, isn't it? I like to say relationships rule the world. People like doing business with people they like. I had folks giving me a card last night saying, oh, we want you to come speak at our organization. I said, you've never even heard me speak, but I like you. You know, I said, that's cool. Okay, great. Call me. How do we forge those strategic relationships for that one mission, one goal, one team, one IT? I was at the NASA IT Summit with Linda. It was an amazing event. I just want to give you a shout out and say thank you for that event. Linda, where are you? Oh, she just left. All right. Well, if you were there, you know what I'm talking about. Amazing, but it's about the support network. This is just a cool picture of me in the cockpit. Every pilot has one. This is the machine that took me into battle. Sometimes it took bullet holes to keep me from getting them, and for that, I am truly grateful. This next slide, I just want you to say this to yourself. Breakthrough my reality with a breakthrough mentality. How do we break through where we are right now, harnessing the power of that breakthrough mentality? Make that a challenge. What one action step, if nothing else, the one that's at the top of the priority list that you're going to take back to your organization, to your leaders, to your emerging leaders? And by the way, how do we harness their innovation in this conversation? And sometimes you have cool breakthroughs, right? And yes, she is down to earth and was super cool. And hopefully when my book comes out, April 28th of next year, I will go back on the show. So put that one out there. Everybody percolate on that one for me. One mission, one goal, one team. I'll leave you with this thought. I was riding north on the I-5. The top is down on my Jeep Wrangler. I've just gotten back from another deployment. And bumper to bumper. The fumes are everywhere. It's so good to be home. But I decided if I'm going to be in bumper-to-bumper traffic, I'm going to go over the Pacific Coast Highway and ride in bumper-to-bumper traffic, right? Might as well. The view, the waves coming in, the white puffy clouds, the sway of the palm trees, the breeze on my cheek. It is so good to be home. I finally get to work. I'm a little late. I shuffle some papers around on my desk. Do what I call working for a couple minutes. Head up to the hospital for a routine doctor's appointment, and I'm doing what I love doing, right? Anybody figured that out yet? Talking, yeah. Why does everyone always get that? Talking. Got to be passionate about something, right? Might as well do what you love. And so, hey, Maureen, what's going on? Why are you here? Well, ma'am, I'm here for a little physical therapy. Physical therapy? What happened? Some shrapnel in my leg. Shrapnel? Were you recently deployed? Well, yes, ma'am. 11th MEU, Iraq. I said, hey, I was on the 11th MEU. I was your Cobra air support. Oh, ma'am. You fly Cobras? We were in the cemetery. We were pinned down. A Cobra came in, shot a missile. I said, whoa, wait a minute. That sounds like a mission I was on. Paired it up, same mission, same aircraft, same missile. And we started yelling and screaming, woohoo, yeah, all right! And we were excited. And we were not in the psych ward. Yet. Then he stopped. And he stood there. And he stared at me. Ma'am, you saved my life. One mission, one goal, one team. One mission, one goal, one team. One IT. Talking about the community. Going from where we are to where we want to be. I look forward to continuing the conversation because this is what it's about. That next generation. That woman in the flight suit that planted that seed inside of me. Flying that amazing aircraft around the world for 2 months. Influencing the influencer, influencing those who want to be influenced, influencing those who need and can't wait to see the possibilities, but not just possibility, the tangibility of the possibility. If you're interested in having a conversation with me about the possibilities and tangibilities of the possibility, even with your organization, I will be outside. Tweet me, Facebook me, let's connect, because this is what it's all about. And with this, we don't only create a breakthrough life. Many times what we do, the people in this room, the legacy that we create saves lives. Thank you so much. Breakthrough. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. All right.
This is just a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you
That
so
was
much.
wonderful.
I appreciate you. All right.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Vernice, for sharing your personal experiences. You actually have to work a little bit more on your spirit, your passion, and your enthusiasm, okay?
I'll work on
I am delighted to announce, and I think Bernice was alluding to it, she has a book signing right after this session, so please take an opportunity to have her sign your book and pick up a copy. Throughout our government agencies and private sector organizations, we can all harness the power of breakthrough mentality. So join Bernice after today's finale for a meet and greet, as she suggested, and a book signing in the foyer just outside the Virginia room here. And now I'd like to welcome Darren Ash, my ELC Vice Co-Chair, to the stage for our ELC finale, the Obama administration, the next 2 years.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Bernice, thank you. Wow. Our final panel today is a great closing discussion for this year's ELC. And of course, congratulations to those of you able to be here for it. You're in for a great discussion. Returning again today to help out is our moderator, Ed O'Keefe of the Washington Post. Almost to the halfway point of the current administration, we're excited to have key leaders from GSA, DOD, and OPM hear about their plans to improve government, enhance productivity, promote accountability, and support our workforce and our missions. With that, please welcome Ed O'Keefe, who will set the stage and introduce you to our distinguished panel.
Thank you. We'll get right started. I'm Ed O'Keefe for the Washington Post. Good to be with you again. And I was thinking last night, a lot of people in Washington talking about the fact that the business community doesn't get along with the Obama administration. I think if they were to spend some time with all of you, they'd see that it's possible. Now, certainly this is an industry that benefits from the government, but it's good to see business folks and government folks working together as well as all of you do. But we do have a good panel today with three people who are definitely going to be busy, at least in the next 2 years, while the boss is out running for implementing all of the changes he's announced in the last 2 years. So let's get started. Martha Johnson is the Administrator of the General Services Administration. She previously served as Chief of Staff at GSA from 1996 to 2001. Was also Deputy Secretary at the Commerce Department. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Up next, the award-winning Dave Wennergren, soon-to-be Assistant Deputy Chief Management Officer at the Pentagon. Welcome, Dave.
Yeah, really.
And Nancy Kitchak of the Office of Personnel Management. She's the Associate Director for Strategic Human Resource Policy. Welcome to Nancy. I spent a lot of time covering the federal agencies and of all sorts. I was late to dinner last night because the Postmaster General announced his retirement. But one of the more interesting aspects of my beat, I think, has been sort of the management reform agenda that your big boss, President Obama, has been pushing through in various ways. And arguably, I think the one that I certainly hear the most about is the plan to somehow accelerate the process of hiring new people into the government. As we wrote back in May, the changes are expected to cut in half the time it takes to fill vacancies and allow the government to better compete with the private sector for top talent. So Nancy, since I know you're deeply immersed in this issue, we're going to start with you. You're the first victim. Just last week, a reader sent me an email out of the blue after stumbling across our story about this change in May. And she said the changes, quote, are truly a godsend for me because it'll allow her to go from being a contractor at a government hospital to being a full-time federal worker with the federal benefits. She spent 7 years applying for different positions in the federal government. 7 years, that means, of filling out those dreaded KSAs. One of the more interesting things about this whole reform is that President Obama really only gave you about 6 months. It essentially all starts on Monday, allegedly. And I'm curious, will it start on Monday? Will the hiring process be faster right away, or is it going to take some time?
The prior process is already faster. From the time the president issued his memo telling us to get going, we've been going. And a lot of agencies have already eliminated KSAs. They have already simplified the job announcements, have done them in plain English, have done them in a way that employees or applicants can understand what's happening. We're already seeing the time to hire coming down. So if you go on USA Jobs, which has been simplified, you will find that most of the announcements there are already shorter. USA Jobs is already set up to receive the notification from most agencies, not all agencies, but it's not quite November 1st yet anyway. And so USA Jobs will be notifying applicants at 4 points in the process, and most of them are receiving, most of the agencies have done that. They're getting a notice that their application was received. They're getting a notice whether they've met basic qualifications. They're getting a notice as to whether their application has been referred to the hiring manager, and then they will find out who got the job when they got the job. So we're well underway. The successes are visible. The thing that is difficult is getting the hiring managers totally engaged, because hiring managers do not consider themselves HR professionals. And yet I think most people in this room should think of themselves as HR professionals, and that it's their responsibility to help us find the right people for the job.
The bottom line, if I hear from someone next week who says, I'm going to go apply for a government job, my understanding is this process will be quicker. You're telling me that in at least some agencies, conceivably, how long will the process take from application to notice of either acceptance or rejection?
Well, our target is 80 days. I will tell you, we're not going to meet that target right away. I'm going to guess it's going to be around 110 is where we are now. When we started this process, we were around 180. So we're on a good path to get the time down.
Beyond the issues within agencies about hiring, what's been the reaction otherwise internally within the government? Is there sort of an agreement that this was needed? Is this asking for too much?
I think the HR professionals are excited. They needed the support. They wanted to get this done. The people in the federal government are excited. The people who are doing the actual hiring are still skeptical as to whether, without those written KSAs, they're going to be able to assess the candidates in the way they want to. And that is why, over the next 2 years, we are going to be working on assessment tools for the major occupations that will be in place of the KSAs, another way for folks to determine if they have the best applicant.
And we're going to get into the assessment of at least one of those in a little bit. But Dave, give us a sense from the Pentagon at least how these changes might help or hurt things in getting people in.
Well, they're crucially important because, you know, we have this situation that we all face together, right? That people of my generation, baby boomers, are leaving the workforce, and the generation that comes behind us, the Generation X, is a smaller population. So this generation that Don Tapscott talked about with us on Sunday night, the net generation, is another boom. And so these young men and women who are like a prime demographic for us in DoD, either coming out of high school or coming out of college to join the military or become civil servants, they will take leadership positions at a much younger age just by sheer numbers as baby boomers leave and there aren't enough Generation Xers to fill in. And so, you know, the challenge for all of us is how will you attract and retain this workforce of the future? And it's not something we should be taking lightly. And if I can do a crass commercial plug from my old life as a deputy CIO before my new life as the assistant deputy chief management officer, if you go to the Federal CIO Council website, you can find the Net Generation report that the Federal CIO Council published, which I think is really helpful to you, whether you're in industry or in government, whether you're an IT professional or just any federal manager, because it kind of walks you through this issue about, so what are the values, norms, and behaviors of the net generation, what attracts them, and helps you sort of work through how you can actually use the federal system to attract and retain. But it will take some changes for us, right? It will require us to think differently about the technology that we offer to them and to think differently about the relationship that we have with them. The good news is that they have a yen for public service. And the bad news for us is that, you know, you won't keep them if you don't give them the environment where you can unleash their creativity. And that means a very different kind of supervisory experience, one that's about mentoring and coaching rather than the experience that maybe I had of, you know, performance appraisals once a year or so. Are you offering leadership opportunities? You're offering them the tools that allow them to do social media and collaboration. Because if we don't find ways to get them on board and then get them engaged in leadership opportunities quickly, they won't stay.
I want to ask the two of you, there's an ugly word for some people, mostly in the business community in Washington, insourcing. And I'm curious how that ongoing effort is either blending with or potentially complicating this ongoing hiring acceleration. Because I got to believe that if you're a contractor whose position is potentially getting insourced and you want to keep that job, you're not looking forward to the potentially treacherous path of going from being a privately employed person to someone within the federal government, Nancy?
I'm not so sure it's, hopefully, working for the federal government isn't a scary thing.
No, not that, but the fact that the process of getting
No,
in might
and
be scary.
The difficulty is that we are very committed to competitive jobs for everyone. And so, yes, you could have a job that you've worked in for years and it's insourced and now you're going to have to compete for it. And that is a scary process to the individual, and it's scary to the agency because they've developed these relationships with the employees. So that's something we're struggling with, is that we're getting a lot of requests for direct hire to circumvent the competitive process, and we're not generally honoring those. And it's been my experience recently that there has been a slowdown in the effort to insource, probably because the agencies are trying to figure out the best way to make that happen right now.
But it is alive and well at the Pentagon.
I think the key for all of us is that you have this sort of market basket of options, and you have to figure out how to use them effectively. There are clearly jobs where government authority and oversight needs to have been exercised. If you weren't using government employees to do that, sort of shame on you, and you need to get that fixed. There are clearly places where it's the partnership with industry experts, and the expertise that we're able to get by having a total force that involves support contractors too is really important. And so as a federal manager nowadays, you have to be able to sort of be adept at figuring out which thing fits the situation that you face and take advantage of some of the other opportunities that exist for you too. In DoD, we've used highly qualified experts quite well for the last couple of years to help get some industry folks into government jobs that have special expertise to help us do the sort of business transformation work. We were really enamored with something called the IT exchange program that was in place for a couple of years and now has come back. And this idea about it could be more fungible, how people from our industry partners could come and spend a year or two with us and not have that mess up organizational relationships and conflict of interest, but actually allow you to have the sort of the best and brightest of industry come and understand government better, provide help to us, and then go back to their regular job. So we got to figure out how to use all of these tools.
We're just scraping the surface on that. And I should remind you that towards the end, we'll take questions from all of you in the audience. So if you have follow-ups on anything we're asking, think about them, and we'll save some time for it. Now, one of the biggest, at least they say, recruiting tools for bringing people into the government has been the idea that you may at one point be able to work remotely. Who here today has phoned in or fired up the laptop to check in with what's going on at work? And of you, how many of you are with the government? Okay, telework. I'm sitting next to the administration's, probably the administration's biggest advocate for this. Are you all aware of how Martha was officially sworn in to her position? Why don't you tell them how that happened?
I get to tell that story. Well, that's a great introduction. I was finally confirmed by the Senate in the middle of the snowstorm. And so
Snowmageddon.
The Snowmageddon. And so I was sworn in my kitchen. The tricky thing about it is that when you're sworn in on a cell phone and you need to have one hand on the Bible and one hand raised, you can't hold the cell phone. So you're sort of talking into the counter, but my husband held the phone to my mouth and I talked to it. So yes, I was sworn in. Remotely.
Telephonically. And if that isn't an example of how it could work, I don't know what is.
Right.
But I know that we're on the verge of Congress probably putting the finishing touches on telework legislation. The House had passed the version, the Senate passed a modified version. The House very well could quickly do so during the lame duck, depending on how things go. There are essentially telework coordinators at most agencies right now, but this would mandate that basically every agency have some kind of telework manager. Have any sense of what would qualify someone to be a telework manager?
Well, I would certainly hope they'd have the experience of teleworking so that they understand it. I think telework is one of those things that is about true believing. If you've done it, you understand that it's doable and that it really improves your ability to perform. Anybody who is commuting is happy to get off the roads for a couple of hours and has extra energy to face their work. Uninterrupted time is a wonderful gift to anyone who is trying to do the kind of knowledge work that a lot of government workers do. So I think it's about people really experiencing it, but I do think this is a matter of leadership. I don't think that, we've been trying to telework for years, and I think it's been an incremental sort of hesitant move forward. Part of that is because the initial business case for telework was largely a work-family kind of a business case, which is thoroughly legitimate. Let me be very clear about that, but it isn't compelling to all the other demands on a workforce. Now, as I've returned to government, the business case for telework is just stunning. It's environmental, it's financial, it's security, as well as work-family. And that combination, those four things, pile in on the rationale for the question of why aren't you teleworking? And I think we need to flip that question, and we need to put the burden on proving that teleworking is for some reason wrong rather than assuming that it's wrong. So it's a leadership piece and it's an experience piece. We are also, I think, at a tipping point where people genuinely, at least in the Washington area, genuinely can say, I am more productive if I'm not on these roads.
And we should point out that President Obama issued some kind of statement over the weekend about it being, I think it was like Family Awareness Month or Family Awareness Day, and it did include a line about the fact that the administration is promoting telework as a way to encourage people to be able to spend more time with their family while also doing their job.
You have to be very careful. If you're teleworking and you have young children in the home, you have to have daycare arrangements for them. This is not about double duty. This is about the convenience of and the flexibility of not hauling into the office, getting in the uniform, and all that just to sit on your computer.
Where's been the tougher sell, on Capitol Hill or within the agencies, sort of explaining it out?
My experience has been more in the agency, I have to confess. I kind of came into this a little late in the game in that sense. And I think it is, there is a permafrost in middle management, there's no question. In any big organizations, you can have leadership and you can have the front line, all who understand it, but the middle management is where it comes to rest. And I think that the business case is compelling, but they are on the front line, in a risk-averse, a highly, oversighted environment of oversight, and they're the ones who are feeling the real pinch of that, and I think they're the people we have to move through it.
Now, I know this is in place in a lot of agencies already, but generally, what is the administration hoping? Is it going to be a case from a technological standpoint where someone either brings home the government-issued laptop or is able to log in remotely from home to some kind of secure network? Do we have a sense of that yet? Or maybe, Dave, you know?
There are all kinds of answers to that. But
I was going to say, to us, it's hugely important for a number of reasons. I mean, one, continuity of operations, what happens if you can't get to work because of Snowmageddon or some other kind of issue, but also about productivity. And again, back to the issue about the net generation, right? I mean, people have different expectations, and they'd like to be able to, work as many hours as they like at the times of day when they would want. And so there's all sorts of flexibilities that are built into it if you have effective technology. But number one, you got to get your head around, you better be prepared for lots of people to be able to connect in, right? So you better have lots of government laptops that are going out, but even sort of more profoundly, and this is sort of the call out to all the technologists in the audience, we have to get past the sort of mindset we have now where the only way that you can be part of the sort of telecommuting family is if you have a government laptop, right? Or go to a government center, because we're going to have to get our heads around being able to come in on any computing device. I mean, you watch how people manage their lives now with their Droids and their iPhones and their iPads, and it's not enough, right? Because otherwise we're sort of talking out both sides of our mouth. I know in the Department of Defense, we sort of demanded a culture of self-service and the ability to be connected from anywhere, and yet every National Guardsman doesn't get a laptop and stuff. And so we can't have this sort of double standard where we say, we really want to encourage you, but you don't necessarily have the tools. And part of that change will be the technology solutions that allow us to use any computing device, the one at our home or the one at the library kiosk, as well as the ones at a commuting center or the ones that you bring home from you.
But there's another piece. We've had a very interesting little pilot going on in GSA in one of our regions where a whole group of 40 people picked up and decided to work virtually.
This is in Kansas City, right?
In Kansas City, and they did it 5 days a week, and it was a whole orchestrated thing. I've told this story before, but the critical thing we learned about the technology is that when they moved as a group, they were off-site and they needed to connect with each other through some social networking tools so that they could maintain their protocols with each other, their community with each other, and so it was more than just the physical hardware. It was really having some good collaboration tools to promote that community and that.
And what did they use?
What did they use? Oh,
some kind of internal system.
I'll get back to
it.
It was an internal system, and it was actually not the smoothest, but they made it work because they wanted it to work, which tells us that in these collaborative the collaborative world is going to be pulled by people working virtually. It's sort of a flip. Rather than push collaboration tools, we need to push teleworking, and they'll pull the collaboration
But you're not in a
tools.
position where someone could use GChat or Facebook or something like that.
Well, there are all kinds of tools that people are beginning to amass, and you know, we know the government worker will even go offline if they have to, just to get in touch with each other, and they might pick up the phone. But we're playing with a lot of new ideas and new technologies to enable that.
Do you have any sense, Dave, how many people at DOD conceivably are eligible for this? Because I know there's a big concern about security. You know, obviously a doctor can't telework. The guy working at NIH in the lab can't do it from home. But have you figured out who really is and who isn't eligible?
I think that I think it's still underutilized, right? And I think that we're doing better. And as Martha pointed out, a lot of it is more about the people change aspect. About you don't have to be physically, you know, sitting in the seat for me to know that you're being productive. So it's this cultural change. We have broad swaths of people that are using it, but I still think we could use it more. And we're going to have to continue to push together to make that happen. And to your question about the tools, you know, there are a number of tools. And so it all sort of depends on what you do, right? And so we have communities that use internal social networking tools, the human intelligence analysts, right, who probably aren't telecommuting as much as some. Although we do have, you know, classified devices now where you can do work even remotely and stuff. So, but, you know, you kind of are glad that they're collaborating in an enclosed space on an enclosed network. But at the other end of the spectrum, as you heard on Sunday night, you know, lives were saved in Haiti because people were able to connect using tools like Facebook and Twitter and things like that. So we have large communities that are using the, you know, the public social networking tools in addition to the sort of internal ones that we offer.
Well, let me ask you a sort of ground level, real world question that I get asked too. Are we ever going to see the day where federal workers can easily use Firefox or use their iPhone instead of having to use a BlackBerry?
I sure hope so. I think that should be like a call to action for all of us. You know, I had to do a little stump speech inside DOD where I talk about, you know, you need to be able to get on any DOD computing device and find the people and information that you need. The world has to be different. It can't just be about, you know, only this computer in this office. But that's really just to get people thinking in the right direction. I mean, the real goal has to be that you figured out ways to do things like secure browsing and virtualization so that it doesn't matter that your kid was doing peer-to-peer file sharing or you're in a library kiosk where somebody else was doing something before. You have to be able to get on any device and be able to get connected and get the knowledge that you need. And there are technical solutions that could help people do that. But we will have to get ourselves to that place, right? Because you're right. I mean, there's going to be an expectation that a decade ago, you know, I used to come to work to get access to better computing gear than I had at home. But I would offer that most of us don't find that experience to be true today, and that we maybe have better gear in our private lives than we do at work. And so actually, you know, we may not be able to fix that by buying more gear at work. We may be able to fix that by leveraging the fact that people have great technology already in their hands, and how could they use that too?
That's one of President Obama's most used lines when it comes to this, is that the kids going to school with their backpack have better technology than most government workers. One of the questions I like to ask a CIO or a CTO whenever I meet them, are you a Mac or a PC guy? Because they have to be so careful with this answer.
So I'll confess I'm a PC guy at home and at work, but I love Macs too. I love all the vendors.
That's why I like asking the question.
But in a past life long ago, far away, when I was at the Navy and we were implementing the Navy Marine Corps Intranet, you know, we swapped out from hundreds of local networks, and we went to this big managed service contract where we replaced everybody's computers with Dell was the brand of the day. But that's sort of not to the point. But there's only one place in all of the United States, 350,000 people, we only had to call base security once. It was in California, of all places, and it was a Mac user who refused to give up his Mac. And so, so you're right. It's something that people feel very passionately about.
When I asked that question of Vivek Kundra last year, his heart stopped because he had to quickly come up with a good answer. Nancy, teleworking is being used as sort of a selling point in getting new people to work. Are you really hearing from people that say, I am willing to work for the whatever department, but I really don't want to have to go down to Constitution Avenue to do it?
Definitely. It was part of the human capital. We asked a question on the employee viewpoint survey. Right, the name changed. On the employee viewpoint survey, and we found out how many people could not telework because of the nature of their job.
And it was something like 60+%,
right?
And 36% or so are doing it at least once a week?
And it's about another under 20% of folks who want to telework and they can't.
Right.
By the way, we have half of our workforce is working from home. Our investigators have never been in the office, and they're using Facebook. to stay in touch. So that's how we're moving out.
There you go. One of the other things I know you wanted Nancy to touch on, especially for this crowd, is the fact that cybersecurity obviously is becoming a bigger concern, and sort of how the government staffs that issue. This is, by the way, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Happy month. Pat your laptop on the back or something, I don't know. But give us a sense, Nancy, you guys completed a survey this month that tried to identify the critical tasks. It's part of sort of an ongoing look at all of them. What have you guys learned? Any sense of what it told you? Are you going to be doing similar studies on cybersecurity specifically?
Well, what we're trying to do in conjunction with the White House task force that is dealing with the education of cybersecurity, and the White House is looking at this globally, not just the federal workforce, but our piece is to try to get the federal workforce where it needs to be in the cybersecurity world. What we're trying to do is determine how you identify those people and how you pay them and what competencies they need to have. And the issue is that there are various IT classification series, and it's unknown at this point whether you can hire for cybersecurity under our current structure or if we need to change that. So we've been engaged in not only surveying the cyber workforce and asking them what competencies they need, but we've been engaged with the HR professionals trying to find out how you recruit and retain the cybersecurity workforce with the goal of determining how we're going to identify